Namaste and greetings. I, Nikita Bhardwaj, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI #Web Policy Learning. Today, we are gathered here for Day 15 of Law and Public Policy Youth Fellowship, an online national summer school program, a 2-month online immersive legal awareness and action research certificate training course and internship program. This program is organized by IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi. The chair for the program is Professor Vibhuti Patel, visiting distinguished professor at IMPRI. And the fellowship lead advisor and the expert legal hands-on session is Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, visiting senior fellow IMPRI. The distinguished experts include Sri Sandeep Chachra, Professor Vibhuti Patel, Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, Advocate Dr. Vaida Nainar, Professor Mukul Ashar, Professor Uday Shankar, Shri Udit Mishra, Dr. Nivedita P. Haran, Shri Bhartendra Singh Baswan, Dr. Purnima Chauhan, Advocate Dr. Albertina Almeida, Dr. Gladstone Xavier, Professor Aruna Roy, Advocate Audrey de Mello, Dr. Kaustav K. Bandyopadhyay, Advocate Mriganjani Deshmukh, Professor Sharmila Gughe, Advocate Flavia Agnes, Dr. Rashmi Singh, Mr. Debaditya Sinha, Professor Swaran Singh, Advocate Lara Jasani, Professor Anil K. Gupta, Justice Ajit K. Singh, Mr. Himanshu Shekhar, Dr. Amar Jasani, Dr. Soumyadeep Chattopadhyay, Mr. Biral Khan, Shri Rajiv Ranjan Singh, Shri Tikender Singh Panwar, Shri Shailesh Gandhi, Dr. Simi Mehta, Advocate Abdul Hafiz Gandhi, Professor Amita Singh, Dr. Ajay Gudavarti, Shri Amit Dubey, Professor Sanghamitra Acharya, Dr. Y. Suresh Reddy, Advocate Sanchita N., and Shri Surendranath Tripathi. The conveners for this course are Dr. Simi Mehta, CEO and Editorial Director at IMPRI, Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, Visiting Senior Fellow IMPRI, and Dr. Arjun Kumar, Director at IMPRI. I welcome you all to this enlightening deliberation and thank you for putting your time, energy, and efforts into truly understanding the vital role and complex intricacies of legal and public policy frameworks. The course will enable the participants to comprehend the nuances and technicalities of legal and public policy paradigms, and therefore acquire theoretical insights along with technical skills to conduct research. We have also shared the course outline and reading resources document in your email for your kind perusal. We will be providing videos of each session for flexible learning at your pace and place. Before we start today's session, I would like to announce the housekeeping rules. It is imperative that you join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise. Refrain from making general comments in the question to save time. Our session for Day 15 will cover topic of reporting Parliament and laws and public policies by Mr. Himanshu Shekhar, followed by a discussion on the Law and Public Policy Action Research Fieldwork Program. To start the session, I would like to invite Professor Vibhuti Patel for her opening chair remarks.
Yeah. Good morning, friends, and thank you, Nikita. First of all, I would like to offer my heartfelt thanks to IMPRI team, especially Dr. Arjun Kumar and Dr. Simi Mehta and Nikita, Fitita, Dr. Shalu Nigam, Mr. Satyam Tripathi, and Shweta Shankar for putting this course together. Welcome, Mr. Himanshu Shekhar and esteemed participants. In last 5 weeks, we have debated important concerns within a symbiotic relationship between law and public policy, instruments in international rights, how the political economy defines the priorities in public policy and law, the policy initiatives taken by the Indian judiciary, namely Indian judicial activism, and role of media in defining the course of public policy and law, how the administration, governance structures, and bureaucracy, they play a very important role for at an implementation level and also at times in terms of the reforms in the rules and regulations. Urban governance has been a major concern in this course. Several participants, either administrators or researchers or social activists, have taken up these concerns of urban governance and urban development. Question of peacemaking, peace building, and peacekeeping that was also dealt by the social worker Dr. Gladstone Xavier. And we also how the civil society plays a very important role in bringing the evidences and bringing the important concerns. That was also discussed by Dr. Kaustav Bandyopadhyay and of participatory action research, and Dr. Aruna Roy and Mr. Nikhil Day also talked about the very case study of Mazdoor Kisan Sangram Samiti and its work towards a right to information, right to education, right to work, and a right to health. And currently the reforms that we are seeing in the government of Rajasthan, in which also they have played a very proactive role. We also had discussion on the question of child rights, and especially with special focus on Juvenile Justice Act and Goa Children's Act by the two legal activists as well as legal teachers, law teachers. We had this thing for the question of social welfare, which the state governments at a subnational level are doing, and also union government is doing. That was also shared by Dr. Rashmi Singh. And we had environmental law, the whole previous 2 days where we had a sessions on environmental law, and right from the global initiative and in India, what has happened. And yesterday there was a very detailed discussion on dilution of environmental policy with specific focus on environmental impact assessment and what can we do as citizens to promote renewable energy, protect traditional livelihoods in critical situation, overcome water crises, overcome food scarcity, and climate response to climate emergencies. The last lecture by on environment was by Dr. Anil K. Gupta, who from the National Institute of Disaster Management, where he gave the technical details, scientific information, and also the role with the state and non-state actors are playing, both in damaging the environment and what can we do to mitigate the impact of environmental disaster. And he says that environment impacts ecological structure, and ecology and the anthropogenic factors also impact environment. So it is a two-way relationship, and we have to learn to live with it, and we have to come up with the environmental concerns. We should adopt them in a mission mode, and also then only we'll be able to mitigate the impact of disasters. And he ended with a circular economy approach, where you have a zero waste approach, which is now circular economy approach has become, it's so much in currency in the current context. Dr. Shalu Nigam had an interactive session, very interesting session on capital punishment, and both the sides of the arguments were put forward. Was Mr. Garvit Gupta, he gave, and Dr. Arjun Singh gave argument in favor of capital punishment, which are popularly used in a global discourse and also in our country after Nirbhaya tragedy. And Dr. Shalu Nigam, who supported abolition of capital punishment, she also gave a very, very robust argument, and the international data and also the analysis of the official data in our country. And she said that how the laws get weaponized and used against poor and marginalized. So we have to, when we talk about capital punishment or state taking life of a citizen, then we have to keep this in mind, the skewed reality that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, we have Mr. Himanshu Shekhar, who will be taking up the session on the topic, Reporting Parliament and Laws and Policies. Mr. Himanshu Shekhar is the Senior Editor, Political and Current Affairs at NDTV India, and the Visiting Senior Fellow at IMPRI. Welcome, sir, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Vibhuti ma'am. Good morning, Shalu ma'am. Good morning, Arjun sir. I know I was just hearing the long list of eminent people who have been part of this online course. My subject broadly is slightly different than what you might have been hearing last few weeks. It is essentially centered on how Parliament of India works, the centrality of Indian Parliament in Indian politics, and my own experience of covering and reporting on Parliament for the last 22 years. And it has been a great journey to see how Indian politics has evolved in last 2 decades, how Parliament as an institution, as the most important political institution in our democracy, how it has evolved, how parliamentary procedures have evolved, and how the centrality of Parliament in the policy-making, law-making exercise has in fact been strengthened over the last few decades. And today, of course, Parliament stands as perhaps the most preeminent institution in the country, which has the central role in formulating laws for our country. I wish to start with my own journey of how I started covering Parliament. In fact, I came to Delhi as a 17-year-old boy with a dream to become a sports journalist. And I chose English honors in Delhi University because I thought that my first focus should be on improving my language skills. And I also wanted to become a writer. So it was a very natural course for me. But in that period, two things happened. One, I took membership of the American Center Library. And the other was, of course, my readings on English literature, especially Dickens and other leading authors. And in the American Center Library, I would sit for hours at times just to watch the videos of the Gulf War. And I could see how journalists were actually reporting in the war field. And then in the college library, lots of readings on journalism, how British writers used to be journalists earlier. And all this led to me planning a course in political science in my post-graduation. So I went to JNU, and that actually was the first opportunity for me actually to study the Indian politics, political theories, the history of Indian politics, and how our nation like India was formed actually through a long freedom struggle. And then journalism happens because that was my primary goal. And then one of the first important assignment I got to cover Parliament was way back in 2001 monsoon session. That was the first session I covered. And since then, I have had the privilege to actually report on almost all the important sessions that have happened in the last 22 years. And through this, if I was just thinking when I was planning this interaction, that how this has been a journey actually to not only document, but also understand how the politics of India has been shaped by what has happened in Parliament, how laws are made, the complexities of lawmaking processes, and how, most importantly, the consensus building process actually works in Parliament. Now, India is a very complex democracy, and even to formulate a law, for instance, I will give you just one instance, that in 2017, a process of getting inputs from stakeholders on the personal data protection bill was started. Now, this is the first draft legislation to regulate social media in India. And just to give you a perspective on how much complex this process has been, that since 2017, it's 2023 now, it is still a work in progress. And after 5 years, when a bill was introduced in Parliament, the government of India decided to withdraw it. And now in this session, which is starting on 20th July, a new digital personal data protection bill will be tabled in Parliament, which will then again go to the joint committees, select committees, the standing committees for further deliberations. So in last 6 years, there is still the effort is on to develop a political consensus on the broad contours of how we should actually formulate a digital personal data protection bill to regulate social media, which is now affecting our life, our privacy, the security of the data that we share on different social media platforms. And this has been the case with almost most of the legislations that we have actually reported in Parliament. Stormy debates, you must have all been witnessing on television, on Lok Sabha TV, Raj Sabha TV, and behind the scene also, lots of effort goes on in building up political consensus. So I think one of the things which shaped why I chose to become a journalist was that how a country of more than 1 billion people are actually governed, how India is managed, how India is governed, how a complex country with multiple ethnicities, caste groups, they actually come together, and how a consensus process is actually built up, how when Parliament passes a legislation, everyone accepts it, even though there are people who have disagreements on the broad contours of the legislations that are passed in Parliament. So it has been a great journey to understand how through consensus and through conversations, through dialogue, through talks, through meetings, the entire process of building up a national consensus actually happens on the floor of the House, in parliamentary standing committees, in joint committees, in select committees, in other ad hoc committees that are there in Parliament. When I was studying in Delhi University, one of the first readings on parliamentary reporting that I did was on Charles Dickens. Now, we know that he's a very, very well-known author, and he was part of our textbook also. So there was a natural interest to understand Dickens' world. And Charles Dickens actually started his life as a teenage reporter who used to report on Parliament. And I found it very, very, very interesting and very empowering also, that in the sense that there were people in history who have actually started their career with parliamentary reporting. And I wish to just give you two quotes to give you an insight as to how even the British democracy, the British Parliament has actually evolved over the years. And this is a quote from Guardian's editor, Andrew Sparrow. He said, Charles Dickens found politicians pompous. He thought they made promises which they weren't keeping. He wasn't impressed with the rhetoric. He obviously found it boring. These are one of the first reactions that it has been documented of how Charles Dickens himself thought about parliamentary reporting. And then later, in a speech to the newspaper press fund in the middle of the 19th century, Dickens said, "I have won my knees by writing on them on the old back row of the old gallery of the House of Commons, and I have won my feet by standing to write in a preposterous pen in the old House of Lords, where we used to be huddled together like so many sheep." Now, these are the origins of parliamentary reporting. But today, we are actually very, very fortunate that we have access to the press gallery, and there are all the equipments and technical gadgets that we need actually to hear and record and document the parliamentary debates from the press gallery. And of course, since then, in the last 170 years, not only the British Parliament, but Indian Parliament also has become far more organized, and there is far more space for journalists. A few words now on how actually Parliament functions. Now, we know that there are two houses, the upper house, Raj Sabha, and the lower house, Lok Sabha. And there are designated time schedule which are fixed for different kinds of parliamentary deliberations. Now, Raj Sabha actually starts with a section which is called Matters of Public Importance. This goes on for 1 hour. And this is one platform that members of Parliament have, that if they want to raise issues which are contemporary, at times even with the permission of the chair, the members of Parliament are given an opportunity to raise issues. For instance, if Parliament was in session today, then one would assume that lots of questions would be raised on why Delhi is suffering from floods. Now, this has actually exposed the civic infrastructure in Delhi. And Parliament in Raj Sabha, essentially, one would assume that there would have been many notices to raise the problems that people are facing, the fact that the public transport has actually collapsed in many parts of Delhi, why the water supply was affected, which is a very important civic amenity, and why the Delhi government or the other central agencies were not prepared to face such a disaster. And the system of accountability also is in place in Parliament. And once a matter of public importance is raised, the chair often asks the concerned minister to respond to these questions. So one would assume that, a kind of a short duration discussion would have been held in both Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha on this flood crisis in Delhi, which is the worst in Delhi's history. And that has completely exposed that if the river level in Yamuna rises above the warning level, are we actually ready to face this disaster? Imagine now the water level has started receding, but if the rainfall had continued for 3-4 more days, then Supreme Court would have been flooded. A large part of Lutyens zone would have been underwater, and it would have been a very unprecedented crisis in Delhi's history. So all these issues of concern to the common people, to the Aam Aadmi, are very frequently raised in Parliament. Then the next session is called the question answer session. And this is called the question hour, where MPs 15 days before the Parliament starts, they start submitting questions on different issues related to their constituencies in different parts of the country, on different issues related with economy, defense, culture, all kinds of water resources, all the ministries, and then the concerned ministers come prepared to answer these questions. And there are questions which are selected around 75, and the ministers are expected to respond. And even supplementary questions are often allowed by the chair that the members of parliament can raise if they are not satisfied with the answer that the minister gives. A large part of the answers are also tabled in parliament. And as young professionals, early career professionals, undergraduate students, postgraduate students, I will request all of you to start reading and working on the Parliament website. There's a very important website that has been created. It has now just been revamped, the Lok Sabha Digital and Raj Sabha Digital. I request all of you to go to these websites, and you will get all the information related with the subject that you are studying about what is the Government of India's latest stand and important data and perspective on all the answers that are actually tabled by the ministers. These are most authoritative documents that India has, and these are official documents tabled on the floor of the House in Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha. So all those people who want to do research, young researchers, young professionals, all those issues related with economy, politics, India's history, water resources, economy, all these issues, commerce, industry, all this important relevant data related with the Government of India, available with Government of India, with government agencies, are tabled almost every day during a parliament session. So I think the parliament website is one that I will strongly recommend all the young professionals, and you will get lots of information on all the subjects actually that you are studying now, or you have studied, or you are dealing with as an early career professional. Now, considering that Parliament has a limited time, it officially starts at 11 and ends at 6 p.m. So there's a very limited time, and there's a 1-hour lunch break also, which is often taken unless there is a matter of very urgent political or public importance, and the chair decides that there will be no lunch break, but normally Parliament breaks for lunch for 1 hour. And considering that Parliament only has around 6 hours, 7 hours of functioning every day, there are different standing committees and parliamentary committees that have been set up. Now, these are primary institutions which play the most crucial role in building up political consensus on most complex issues. Now, for instance, on GST, I remember there were large number of meetings that parliamentary standing committees held on, where every important party has a representative in the parliamentary standing committee, which normally has a strength of around 30. 21 from Lok Sabha and 9 from Raj Sabha. And normally these are the primary institutions which are assigned the job to actually build up consensus. And they, once the draft legislation is actually sent to a standing committee for further deliberation and examination, they start calling stakeholders. And I can tell you on personal data protection bill, when it was first tabled in 2019, large number of meetings were held. More than 100 meetings were called, where representatives of Twitter, Facebook, Google, all the social media platforms, they used to be invited. They would make presentations. They were asked very difficult questions. And also their inputs were taken on the draft legislation that government had tabled in Parliament. And similar has been the case with several other important legislations. And all those legislations which requires detailed examination and deliberation, they are transferred to the parliamentary standing committees or parliamentary select committee or parliament joint committee, depending on what the chair or the Lok Sabha speaker actually decides. Now, they also have the powers to scrutinize and vet the budgetary allocations, which is very important. Public Accounts Committee is perhaps the most important parliamentary committee, which has the primary responsibility to examine and scrutinize government's finances. They can ask and summon any Government of India official and seek clarifications and data and all relevant information related with the implementation of a law or a policy by a government ministry. In this case, primarily it is Finance Ministry, Commerce and Industry Ministry, and other important economic ministries, Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And they also have the powers to take suo motu notice of issues of public interest. For instance, the last report that I did on parliamentary committee was on cyber security. Now, we do know that hundreds and millions of Indians are now have a footprint on social media. Now, India has the largest number of Facebook users, largest number of users on YouTube. And considering the fact that around 100 crore Indians have smartphones, the normal understanding is that a lot of data that we are sharing on social media platforms, a lot of digital banking that we do, a lot of data that we share with institutions, both public and private. Now, the safety, the security of this data, our personal data, our privacy is a subject of a long deliberation now for many years in Supreme Court, in high courts, in Parliament of India, in parliamentary standing committees. And I remember Jayant Sinha, who is the chairman of the parliamentary committee, told me that we have decided to submit a report on cyber security, on cyber crimes. He said that the attempts at cyber crime has increased manyfold in recent times. And we do hear people who have fallen victim of cyber fraud, somebody's money has been stolen, somebody's account has been hacked, and especially old people, those who are not very well versed with how the online media works and online digital platforms work, they are considered most vulnerable. And there have been many instances of cyber crime. So Jayant Sinha told me that the number of attempts at cyber crime has increased manyfold, although the number of cyber crimes that actually happened has reduced because of the efforts that we are taking. But he said that because of the advent of new advanced technologies like artificial intelligence, for instance, there are new threats to the data that we share on the websites of different platforms, on the bank websites, or on the different social media platforms. So he said that we need a 3 to 5 year concerted strategy at the national level to actually further strengthen the online digital platform security systems that exist now. Because with the advancement of new technologies like artificial intelligence, the hackers now are trying new ways actually to steal and stole the data that me and you and everyone in the country is now sharing on the website. So they will be submitting a report in Parliament, and then that becomes again a subject of detailed deliberation, a discussion. And as I said earlier, the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill will be introduced. And the day it will be taken up for discussion, all these issues and concerns that Parliamentary Standing Committee is now working on will also be reflected in the discussion that will happen in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. And as you know, once a bill is tabled in Lok Sabha first, and once it is passed by Lok Sabha, it is then sent to Rajya Sabha for approval. And at times it happens that there are bills which are first introduced in Rajya Sabha if they are, if the government so decides on a given day. Now the next part of information I wish to share with you is on how a law is made. Now, I know that large number of people in the country don't even think of how a law is formed in India. And so I think it's very important that early career professionals, students, undergraduate, postgraduate level students, they start reading on some of the basic things that happens in Parliament, which is, of course, first is the lawmaking process. It's a long drawn out process. To form a law, as I said, the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill is a work in progress since 2017, when the Kasturi Rangan Committee was first formed to interact with stakeholders and submit a report on what kind of law India needs to regulate the social media. And it's 2023, even after 6 years, we are still very far away from having a national law to regulate social media, which is now increasingly affecting our life. And so once the process starts with the setting up of an experts committee normally, or in this case, for instance, in the Uniform Civil Code, you must have heard that Law Commission actually opened a web page and sought inputs from stakeholders on what kind of Uniform Civil Code India needs. And I think just last week, the chairman of the parliamentary committee, which is examining this subject, Sushil Modi, he said that we have been informed that more than 19 lakh suggestions have come on what should be included in the Uniform Civil Code law, which is, of course, again, a process that will take a long time to actually kickstart. But even at the very beginning, when the first web page is opened and the Law Commission of India seeks inputs from people, he gets 19 lakh inputs in less than a month. And that shows that there is a huge public interest in terms of what kind of law that India needs actually to put in place a uniform civil code. So imagine how many months it's going to take now to actually build up consensus on this very sensitive piece of legislation. So the lawmaking process actually starts with an expert committee or a government commission seeking public inputs. The platform is put open for the public to share inputs. And once they receive all these inputs, then these inputs are seriously examined. It takes many months at times to actually, even you can imagine that 19 lakh inputs on uniform civil code would take many months to the Law Commission. And only recently the tenure of the time that Law Commission had given to the public for giving inputs has been extended because there were a large number of requests from other stakeholders. They needed more time to actually formulate their views. So once the concerned nodal ministry receives the report of the expert committee or a commission on a given proposed draft legislation, then the concerned nodal ministry starts working on the draft that needs to be readied. The next stage is that once a broad blueprint of a draft law is prepared, then the process of interministerial consultation starts between different ministries. Now, in the case of GST, for instance, there were several ministries which were considered stakeholder ministries, all the economic ministries, and then the senior officials, secretary, additional secretary, joint secretary rank officials, then they start holding meetings at the interministerial level to actually examine that what is the draft that India actually needs, what is the draft that government should table in parliament. That process also takes a long time. And once the interministerial consultations are over, then all the inputs that the nodal ministry receives from different stakeholder ministries, they are then examined. Then these inputs, additional inputs are weaved in, lots of things which perhaps in the interministerial consultation, it is decided that they should be withdrawn or removed from the draft legislation. They are removed. And then a draft bill is put before Union Cabinet for approval, which is headed by the Prime Minister of India. And after the Cabinet approves the draft, then that draft goes to the Business Advisory Committee of the Parliament, which then decides on which day the government will introduce a particular draft bill in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, whatever is decided in that meeting. And once that bill is tabled in Lok Sabha, for instance, the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, which is now being readied, once it is introduced in Lok Sabha, then the chair, and there will be a demand, there could be, in this case, of course, there will be a demand from opposition parties that this is a very sensitive piece of legislation and it has to be sent to the parliamentary committees for further deliberation. And then the Lok Sabha speaker will then decide whether it is necessary to send this draft bill, to the standing committee for further deliberation. And then, as I explained, that last 6 years, this effort has been on. So then again, the standing committee will start examining the new draft bill that will be placed in Parliament in the coming monsoon session. And then again, the stakeholder consultations will start. So it's a long drawn out process. And one standing committee or the joint or select committee examines the bill that is tabled in Parliament. Then they submit a report suggesting changes, amendments in the draft of the bill that has been introduced in the Parliament. And then government again examines it. It goes to the concerned ministry. Concerned ministry then decides whether which parts of the recommendation of the standing committee needs to be actually weaved into the bill that was introduced in Parliament, or there are sections that needs to be removed. And once that is done, then again the revised bill, draft of the bill goes to Union Cabinet, then again Cabinet approves it. Then after Cabinet approval, it is once again brought before Lok Sabha, and then the discussion happens. And then it becomes easier actually, because standing committee is a platform where most of the important political parties have their representative MPs, and it's through consensus and majority decision, both the houses will then one by one approve the bill that is tabled in Parliament. So this is the sacrosanct process of how every law in India has been made after independence. And that gives you an idea that how a participatory democracy system in India works through these long labyrinthine process of consensus building, not only between and among institutions, both public and private, but also between and among different government ministries. And once the consensus in government is formed, then it goes to parliament for further political consensus building. And that is where parliament, the centrality of parliament in lawmaking actually, you can very well understand, becomes paramount importance. So these are largely some of the initial thoughts I had, Vibhuti ma'am. And now if there are questions, I'm happy to take that.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening insights. Your expertise and knowledge have truly broadened our understanding in this area. Now I request the chair, Professor Vibhuti ma'am, to share her remarks.
Yeah, I think, yes, Mr. Himanshu Shekhar, you are very lucid and very in a simple language, you have demystified how the parliamentary processes and lawmaking takes place. My major concern is that how the global issues, which involve more than one or two or even multiple countries, they are debated in the parliament, one. And second, that this women's reservation bill, we have been trying for 16 times it was introduced in the parliament. And it ended with nothing but breaking of furniture and all that. So when such behavior is done by the parliamentarian, what actions are taken?
Yeah, very important point. The two things that on the global issues in India, there is a political culture of a consensus on foreign policy matters. When a government comes into power and it takes a policy decision, for instance, the Manmohan Singh government decided to, on the nuclear deal that happened with the US, that was a policy decision that was taken. And normally in India, the foreign policy, there has always been a consensus on most of the issues. And that's why we see that on foreign policy matters, there is a political culture of consensus. Normally, parties come and go out of power, but the foreign policy imperatives are rarely challenged. But on the global issues front, I do remember that many of the issues, for instance, climate change, I've been doing research on disaster management for the last 8-9 years. I can tell you that the frequency of debates on climate change, on disasters has increased in Parliament in recent years. Recently, I would say there are lots of questions on rainfall intensity, how climate change is actually changing the contours of our climate, how there is a rise in intensity, frequency, and scale of disaster incidents. All these issues are being brainstormed more frequently now than what it used to be earlier. There are some issues on which, as you know, there have been large number of disruptions. I think the point that you made is very valid. And as a reporter who covers Parliament on the ground, I spend most of my time in covering disruptions and protests and street protests outside rather than what happens inside, because that is what makes into news very easily. So you're absolutely right that there have been very unruly scenes. And I remember on the farm reform bills, the 3 bills that were brought by the government and all these incidents that happened, even a copy of the constitution was torn by some MPs. Normally, there is a procedure for action. And I can tell you that all those MPs who have been involved in creating ruckus inside Parliament. In fact, a lady MP from Congress, she made a video of the protest that was happening inside the house, which is not allowed, it is illegal, and she had made it public because their allegation was that the Lok Sabha TV or Rajya Sabha TV was not showing that footage. The camera was not where actually they were raising issues. So she made a video from her mobile set, and then she made it public. And even today, she stands suspended from participating in parliamentary proceedings for last session. Also, she could not attend. And on the last day of the last session was where her suspension actually started. So large number of MPs have been suspended. In fact, the procedure is that the chairman in Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha speaker in Lok Sabha is authorized to initiate action. And that happens when a complaint is forwarded to the Lok Sabha speaker or Rajya Sabha chairman, who then forwards it to the Privileges Committee of Parliament. So Parliament has certain privileges. The moment the chair believes or is assured that those privileges have been harmed, those privileges have been attacked, have not been respected, and the conduct of the MPs is not as per the parliamentary standards, then these subjects are transferred to the Privileges Committee. And there are many such complaints now under examination. And we do know that MPs have been actually expelled from taking part in parliamentary proceedings. In fact, in the case of the farm bills, a large number of MPs were suspended, and we saw images of those MPs protesting outside Parliament. In fact, Trinamool Congress MPs spent one entire night inside Parliament campus. And that became a great big story, actually, a political story. But that did not deter the chair from taking back those decisions. They stood by their decisions. And I think that last couple of sessions, though there have been ruckus, there have been hangama, there have been unruly scenes, but those incidents that we had seen in September 2001, when during the monsoon session of 2021, when the government brought in the 3 farm laws, the kind of protests we had seen at that time, we have not seen in last few sessions. But they have been walkout. They have a power. They just now walk out from Parliament, and then they take out a march from inside Parliament to outside Vijay Chowk, where we actually do live reporting from Vijay Chowk. And you must have seen those images of MPs with placards in black clothes protesting. So the protest now has become largely symbolic. Earlier, you are absolutely right. And I used to feel very hurt when I saw those MPs with the kind of behavior they were doing inside in both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. But fortunately, in last couple of sessions, there have been protests. There have been symbolic protests. Slogans have been raised. Placards have been shown. But, before a parliament session starts, the parliamentary bulletin actually reminds MPs of the code of conduct, that you can't carry the placard inside the house. But the system is such where MPs continue to carry with placards inside the house. They continue to raise their issues. So, at a way, you can somewhere condition politics, but then members of parliament have their own rights. So, beyond a point, that, for instance, you can take action against an MP who records a video and makes it public, but difficult to say that MPs can't carry a mobile inside. They have their own privileges. So that's how democracy works. It gives a lot of space to MPs actually to raise issues they want to raise, but then very often the result often is not what it should have been.
Citizens, when we go for any official meeting, we have to surrender our mobile, at the gate. So how come 2 yardsticks for MPs and the citizens? No?
Yeah.
Even when we go as official delegate, when we are invited as Vigyan Bhavan or anywhere, we have to first leave our this thing at the gate, and then only we can enter. No, there is a thorough check.
There are 2 reasons, ma'am. One is, of course, there is a security angle to it. I mean, of course, you are a genuine citizen, but in a huge gathering when there are 500, 600 people, there are restrictions as to how much recording you can do. For instance, if you go to Parliament as a visitor, now in the visitors gallery, if you're allowed a mobile and you start video recording inadvertently, for instance, for your own memory, then that violates the parliamentary law. Even I can't carry my mobile. We have been authorized to carry phones inside Parliament, because now I do my journalism with a mobile phone. I do interviews, because during COVID period, they restricted the entry of camera persons inside Parliament campus so that there are less number of people inside. So last almost 2.5 years, I have actually worked with a mobile phone, and I've done thousands of interviews with my mobile phone. But we are authorized to carry inside Parliament campus. But even inside Parliament building, where actually we sit in the press gallery and watch the deliberations, our mobile is also kept outside, because there are rules that you can't do that. So similarly, in Vigyan Bhavan also, for instance, in a Prime Minister's function, there are restrictions as to how recording can be done. Very often they decide that only agencies will come. So why agencies mean that only an ANI camera will be there and a Doordarshan camera. Even an NDTV reporter can't carry the camera. So, but they allow us to carry mobile because I have to report what Prime Minister is saying inside Vigyan Bhavan, because it's all live. So I can do phonos from inside Vigyan Bhavan. But there are restrictions in terms of recording of the content. And there are very sensitive security issues, which I think this is not the platform to discuss. But there have been instances where a mobile phone, a mobile phone is like a big camera today. If I allow you with a mobile phone in my home, it's like allowing a 2-3 camera persons with big cameras now, because these are so powerful. NDTV is doing mobile journalism since 2016. And I can tell you that I can report in a small handset to a channel in Venezuela or Brazil and do a live just with my handset, keeping it like this in front of me. So that has become so easy. So there are security issues. And that's why there are restrictions as to how far you can carry. And in Parliament campus, we can. Last many years, we are actually using phone, but that is because we have to report. There are officials also who are allowed. But inside the house, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, where you actually enter the house and you go to visitors gallery and I go to press gallery, only MPs have the authority to carry mobile phones inside. Because, there are one more reason for it. The fact is that there is a greater digitalization of the parliamentary procedures and processes. And nowadays, frequently we see that this report, for instance, the economic survey tabled in Parliament, will only be made available to MPs on their mobile phones in a digital format. Budgetary documents only in the digital format. Though budget, every MP gets a copy. But in economic survey, it only comes through mobile. Most of the parliamentary bulletins are issued on mobile. So on a real-time basis, MPs can be given and supplied information. I think they're authorized to carry the mobile phone. But if they make a recording which is not allowed inside the house, then they will get expelled. That precedent has been set.
Yeah. My question about your observations on women's reservation bill, which was introduced in last 20 years, nearly 16 times.
Yeah, I know. Very important, pertinent question. Trinamool Congress in every session demands this. But Parliament at the larger level is also a microcosm of the kind of country we live in. MPs are representatives of the kind of people who live in this country. And I know the issue is, as an analyst who has covered Parliament for so long, I would say that generations of MPs have come and gone, but the political consensus still eludes the women reservation bill.
Correct.
Because 1/3 the MPs in Rajya Sabha changes every 5 years, MPs change in Lok Sabha. So if you say that last many years there is no consensus, that essentially means that hundreds of MPs have come and they have retired from Parliament, but still even the new group of MPs also, they have not been able to come together. And I am actually very sad, and I remember those Sharad Yadav's infamous comments. I had interviewed him also. He got angry with me on camera on this. But this is a subject that I think there is no political consensus. I limit myself to this. We do know, and you also know, that there are issues in public domain that actually conditions why there is no consensus. But the fact is, if in last several Lok Sabha and many large number of MPs who have come to Rajya Sabha and retired, even the new generation, for instance, when the last results came and BJP got more majority than what it had gone in 2015, there was a lot of expectation that this government has the political will to actually work on issues. And, for instance, the Article 370 or the Uniform Civil Code. This has been part of the BJP's manifesto for 25 years, more than 25 years. Yeah. But even the Vajpayee government could not take it up. And you remember when the government was formed in 1999, Chandrababu Naidu insisted that 3 things you have to keep it on the back seat. Uniform Civil Code, Article 370, and one more, Ram Mandir. So, and then only the government could be formed. So this is era of coalition politics, but last 9 years, there has been a government which has absolute majority. But I think this is one subject on which there is still, doesn't appear to be, because if there is a political consensus, I think any government which makes an effort to get it through Parliament will go into history as a government which actually changed the way how Parliament works.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I request Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam to share her remarks.
Thank you, sir. It's a very comprehensive presentation, and we have learned a lot. But just one thing I just want to raise, like your views about, how demonetization, the process. There was a lot of, voices being raised that, demonetization was brought abruptly, and in similar various other laws which are in past few years they have been brought abruptly, or there was more discussion. So those kind of issues are being raised. So what are your views? Are those views correct? Are what is your idea of whether there's been passed swiftly, or what has been happening?
See, the broad idea in theoretical terms behind demonetization, there had to be a surprise, right? Because if there is no surprise, there cannot be any demonetization. So if you hold public discussions, then by the time your discussions and consensus is built up, a large part of the objective will be lost. You agree with this? There had to be a stealth. Otherwise, even now, most of the money came back.
2,000, I mean, 2,000 rupees, no?
Yeah, lots of money came back. So theoretically, the idea and the objective, at times governments work on an idea. And in a complex country like India, and remember, demonetization was something which affected 140 crore people. Yeah. So there was a large exercise. So, as a policymaker, if I'm the leader or if I'm the government, there are certain assumptions and there's certain planning you can do. But beyond that, you cannot foresee the outcomes of some decisions. And with the farm laws, for instance, who would have imagined that thousands and thousands of farmers will sit on the outskirts of Delhi and they will refuse to go back? And then Prime Minister had to announce that India is not ready for these reforms. So unprecedented incident in my journalistic career, that Prime Minister comes on national TV and says we are withdrawing 3 bills passed in Parliament, right? So, and then the farmers went back. So at times, governments have a plan. In terms of theory, it will have some value. But at times, there are implementational issues. And at times, it is difficult to also ascertain how a particular policy will actually pan out. I'll give you one instance. In 2019, December, the Personal Data Protection Bill is tabled in Parliament. From last 2 years, deliberations happened in the Parliamentary Joint Committee, first headed by Meenakshi Lekhi and then by PP Chaudhary, both BJP MPs, and Meenakshi Lekhi joined the government. And then a report is tabled in 2001. And then in 2022, government decides to withdraw the bill. And now they are bringing a new digital personal data protection bill. Because government itself, in these 2 years, the advancement of communication technologies is happening at such a fast speed that a government which had a draft in 2019-20, after 2 years decides to withdraw the bill, saying that we don't think this is comprehensive. We need a new draft bill.
Yeah.
So as a reporter who covered large number of joint committee, I'm very sad that what happened to all the effort we made in covering those committee meetings, because once the report is tabled in Parliament, the bill is withdrawn. Now a fresh bill is coming. So, governments also watch how a particular policy framework actually pans out. And it is possible that after 2 years, when it gets input from stakeholders and starts examining how the new technologies are changing the social media landscape, the government itself decides that no, this is not what we want. In life, it happens. We take decisions which we regret later because it's difficult to pan out to see our future all the time. So this happens with governments also. And I think this happened with demonetization. Because there were lots of things that went wrong. For instance, we saw huge queues, especially in smaller villages where the banking networks are not as it is in cities. Now, the number of Indians who were still transacting in cash was very high at that time. Very few people were actually, the speed with which they expected to move to the digital platform did not happen. Lots of complaints about banks, lots of complaints about unethical means that were employed, to make so-called black money white. So it worked at different levels. So I think most of the objectives that were actually outlined when the demonetization was announced government, of course, realized that many of these objectives actually didn't work on the ground. So, of course, this is a subject, but, again, going back, I remember in the cabinet meeting, when Prime Minister started addressing the nation, that everyone knew that this is what cabinet had decided. And after the PM address started, that the cabinet minister started coming out of South Block. So even there were restrictions in terms of how the information was first shared. So PM announces it. So there has to be an element of surprise, because the exercise was theoretically, I think, if a government says we are doing a crackdown on black money, I think no one will dispute that. But later on, we knew that it ended up hurting a large number of people, especially poor people. I still remember there were people who could not withdraw money from the banks, and many of them were not part of the banking system. They used to keep cash at home, especially housewives. Many of the canteens where I normally go outside NDTV office in Parliament, they said, oh, my wife is taking out money from this corner of the house, that corner of the house. She had saved it, but now we don't know what to do with this cash, how to take it. So lots of issues. It is a very complex national exercise, and we all know what was the outcome.
Thank you, sir. The floor is now open for questions from the audience. Kindly raise your hand if you have any questions.
Well, I have a question to ask. So there are several parliamentary committees, now CAG, a lot of process goes on with the processes, and there are several decisions which are being made, and of course politicians are there as a lawmaker. How do you see this process evolving up? Because for every now and then, for foreign affairs, even for each ministry, we see a lot of committees and those processes. So how do you keep track of all these things, and then finally have some positive impact towards making better laws and policy? How do you see this phenomena evolving in our new parliamentary democracy?
Sir, actually, as I said, the Parliament has a very limited time. So that is why standing committees have been set up on different ministries. The broader idea is, you remember, when a budget is tabled in Parliament, it is first sent to examination to the different standing committees. And there are budgetary outlays for different ministries. For instance, if rural development, Manrega gets a 1.5 lakh crore budget, for instance, then that budgetary outlay for rural development ministry is sent after the budget is presented. And you remember the budget session is in two parts. In first part, FM presents the budget, and then there's a discussion on the president's joint address speech. And then it is called the motion of thanks to the president's address. And once that discussion happens, the Parliament goes into recess for 3 weeks. And these are the 3 weeks where all the parliamentary standing committees of different ministries they then start examining the budgetary outlays that have been proposed by Finance Minister in her budget speech. So Ministry of Commerce will study and examine, the Standing Committee on Commerce will examine the budgetary outlays for Commerce Ministry, the Standing Committee on Agriculture will examine budgetary outlay for Agriculture Ministry, and vice versa. So that the entire budgetary allocation that has been made to different ministries are separately examined in detail by the standing committees. And then they submit input. So after 3 weeks, Parliament is again reconvened so that when the budget is taken up for final consideration and passing, most of the MPs and parties have actually taken part in the very minute examination and vetting and scrutinizing of the budgetary allocation process, so that there is a greater scrutiny in terms of how the money is being allocated to different sectors and ministries. That is the primary role of standing committees. And second is that if, for instance, the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, which is going to be tabled in the session starting on 20th July, it is all set to be sent to the either to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on IT and Communications, or the chair or the Lok Sabha Speaker can decide to send it to a joint committee, which has MPs from both Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha. And then they will have a long, many months of deliberation on the kind of contours of the law India needs. And then they will have to start new round of consultations with stakeholders. Then again, we'll see Twitter CEO, Facebook CEO, Google CEO, Snapchat, all social media platform giants and big tech company representatives will then be summoned one by one. So what does Twitter CEO? I remember very difficult examination happens. In fact, when the Twitter CEO was summoned, an MP asked that you have personal data of millions of Indians. So where do you store this data that you collect of Indian citizens? He said it is stored in US servers, in US. So if it is saved in US servers, and if a data breach happens or a data leak happens in US, then who is responsible? Then he says we can only act as per the US laws. But then MPs asked this question, and I've done reports on this. So I'm saying verbatim what I was told by members of parliament. Then the Twitter CEO was asked, then what is your accountability here? Because we are concerned about the safety and security and privacy of Indian citizens and their personal data on social media platforms. So if there's a violation of my personal data, how can we initiate legal action? They said no action can be taken by US laws because the data is saved in US servers. How much revenue do you earn? I don't have much information on this. How much tax do you pay? I don't have much information on this. Then I remember an MP told me that she asked a social media giant CEO of its India operations that if everything happens outside India, then how can we fix accountability of how you work here? You don't have primary information how much tax you pay. You don't have primary information as to how much revenue you generate. You don't have primary information as to how accountability can be fixed if the data of, say, millions of Indians are leaked out on the web. Who is accountable? That is where the centrality of this new exercise, which is called a digital personal data protection bill, becomes important. So I think there again, Parliament will be at the center stage of the political consensus building process. And you always should expect a stormy debate, because this is a subject on which India is debating for the last many years. And now a new bill will, of course, could lead to a new set of debate, because they will be coming with new provisions. We know, I have interviewed Rajiv Chandrasekhar sir twice on this bill. They are going to bring several new provisions in this, new types of cyber crimes that will require new kind of deliberation, new process of consensus building process in Parliament. So it's very interesting. I mean, from the legal perspective, from policy making perspective, I think, early career professionals, young graduates, postgraduates, most of them would have a very good presence, active presence on social media platforms. So I think they also should play a role in this process. They should try and read what government is planning, how can they keep their personal data safe? Because imagine if a data hack happens, the hard-earned money that we keep in our accounts, that becomes more and more vulnerable.
Thank you so much, sir. Last question for the session. Sir, we have new parliament now, Central Vista, new technology. What do you foresee for this? Any new improvement or how things would be different? What is your...
Things won't be different. It's the same set of MPs, same set of parliamentary procedures which have evolved since 1951. Same set of procedures. There's no change. Only the building is new. And it is a reflection of a new aspirational India. And of course, it has been designed to meet the future needs. Now, its old parliament building is little cramped. And I remember at times the officials will say this part of parliament building is unsafe, becoming unsafe. So for some time, the canteens were closed where we used to have lunch. So they used to make rotis in a different building, which used to be, not very good when it is served, but was served to us. But the canteen managers would say, "Sir, क्या करें? ये रोटी तो 6 बजे सुबह बनी है, वहाँ पर बनी है, वो IRCTC कैंटीन में बनी है, तो सुबह 6 बजे आप रोटी बनाते हो और 1 बजे हम लोगों को देते हो पार्लियामेंट में." So they say, हम क्या करें? यहाँ बना नहीं सकते, यहाँ हम heat नहीं चला सकते. They said that you cook food outside and you serve it in parliament. So that led to delay. Earlier, they used to, we used to get freshly cooked food. But in between, because there were concerns about the structural safety of old parliament buildings, so they had even stopped cooking food in the old Parliament building that me and you are more familiar with. So there have been always concerns. I remember once some water started dripping when a heavy rainfall happened. And one official was saying, अब तुम लोग बोलोगे कि पार्लियामेंट में भी पानी चूने लगता है. So वो पुरानी बिल्डिंग है, उसमें बहुत सारा retrofitting का काम किया गया है समय समय पे. But you know, now this new building gives more space to MPs and to officials, and it is far more modern, digitally more, far more technology savvy. And we are gearing up, but we have been told that a large part of the monsoon session will again be held in the old campus. So there is time for us to actually move to the new Parliament building and report from there. But we're looking forward to it. It's a great change. You know, it's like somebody has changed the world around you. Going and reporting in new Parliament building will be completely new experience.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening our gathering today. We appreciate your valuable contribution and guidance.
Thank you so much. Thank
you. Should we move to the next session discussion on Arjun, sir?
Yes, yes.
The next session for the day is the discussion on Law and Public Policy Action Research Fieldwork Program.
Okay. Vibhuti ma'am, would you like to lead? Ma'am.
Yeah. Yes, good afternoon. Now I think we have the real work that you'll have to do, because you know that we were the ones who were controlling the screen. But now it's a question of this thing and the certain principles of participatory action research. I think there is going to be a session also on both quantitative and qualitative methods of research that we are going to have. But I think main thing is the choice of topic. Because we are not going to do research on any esoteric topic, but it has to, whatever research we do or the field-based work we do, it should contribute to new knowledge, which would transform into new policies or the existing reforms in the existing policies, amendment in the laws and all. So that's why some like topics we have given so that you get an idea. Otherwise, all these 5 weeks of discussions around that, only so many new questions have come up, where the work is in progress or where things are still happening, but we have not arrived at conclusion, where more this thing, like if you take up the question of urban governance, there are so many issues with the Himachal Pradesh case study had raised about urban governance, whether it's about sanitation or public health, or this thing, physical infrastructure. So one of those topics you can focus on that. Then the question of lawmaking, like how currently, like this unresolved issue of 33% reservation for women in parliament. So if you can do participatory action research for first, what all has happened in last 20 years, why this bill did not convert into law, and why it went to cabinet committee so many times and the bill lapsed. And then you can also corroborate it by interviewing the parliamentarians or interviewing the public or the student community, youth community, and you have a focus group discussion, or you have an in-depth case study, or you also go with the questionnaire where you can ask for either quantitative data and also yes, no, and also descriptive data. So that is possible. When it comes to question of people's participation, there are so many presentations were made by people's participation for various demands of the community, whether it was addressing the challenges of pandemic for nearly 2 years, how the rapid assessment studies were done, using mobile, using WhatsApp video to understand what are the mind-boggling issues that the community is facing. So now, like Delhi floods, you may not be able to personally travel everywhere because of the floods. There are so many restrictions, but still, is it possible to reach out to certain people who are, because the way journalists are reporting it, how do lonely elderly people, they are coping with it? How women with small children, they are coping with this flood situation? Or when it comes to the question of, say, right to food, MG Narega or right to food or all the government schemes, what are the hurdles they find in accessing the scheme? So on that also you can do participatory action research, because main aim of participatory action research is to change the status quo in favor of better quality of rights and better quality of life of the people. So with this perspective in mind, you can choose any topic, and then facilitation can be done by IMPRI team in terms of putting you in contact with the right people and right offices, and the later that you would require to do this research, that can be facilitated. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Shalu ma'am.
Sorry, because of internet, this network issue, I missed the larger part of what Vibhuti ma'am had said. But then it's about the fieldwork, yeah, like participatory fieldwork. I think it's a best kind of exposure which any student of law or social sciences or even in any other field. I think this is the best part of exposure you can get, because even people like me, we have learned more from the field and not, what the law schools or, the social sciences schools, they teach you, which is in theory, which is very different from what is happening practically on the ground. So once you go out in the field, you talk to different people, you come to know of different kind of things. So, and then you can correlate your theory with the practice. So that is something which is very, very important in terms of participatory, fieldwork or action research fieldwork, or whatever term you use. But then these are the things which are very crucial in terms of fieldwork experiences. The other thing is that, of course, when once you're going to the field, you have to prepare yourself, because why should if you're coming to me, why should I answers your question? So you have to be prepared in terms of how to talk to people, how to build a rapport, how to address the concerns of people. So these are some of the relevant things which I think we will discuss in the coming weeks. And
also, question of research ethics, no? That first of all, your ownership of this, because you participatory action research, you can't keep an academic distance. Okay, you are owning whatever subject you are. So where you see to it that where you have highest level of commitment to the issue and theme, choose that, so that there'll be complete commitment to that. Number two is a sensitivity, cultural sensitivity, no harm to the respondent. Any question of yours, even covertly or overtly, should not create human misery. Some issues are sensitive, like about riots or violence and all. But the moment you see that things are, that the person is getting agitated or starts crying and all, immediately you have to do hand holding and also report to us that something has gone wrong, and can we change the way of dealing with the issue, or just ask if they don't want to speak, can they write it and give it to you. So various, keep your options open. Number two. Number three is that so many things which you have not anticipated now while writing your research proposal, but you may encounter it when you go to the field. So in that also, be prepared that don't think that I have to just stick to my concept note, because when we talk about grounded theory, your theory comes from your practical experience at a ground level, and reality is much more complex. You are not working in the laboratory, okay? You are working with the people who are where there is a lot of complexity and lot of unforeseen things that happen, no? So that is very important. So no harm to the respondent, that is one. Confidentiality, whatever you research you are doing, you ask them whether they want to give their name or they want to, you have to anonymize, because that they told, no, in so many research presentations, they said how they anonymize the data. Okay, so that is an anonymization. That is also, you guarantee that it won't happen. And if those who want to come out in open and speak about it, like rights of the LGBTQIA people, or the limitation of the existing transgender persons protection of rights bill. So if you interview people, what are the limitations? Do they want to come out in open, or you can anonymize their this thing? Number 5 is your accountability to the respondent. You have taken information from them, you have used their time, and so you are accountable to give them back whatever you have done. Once your report is ready, you have to reach out to them. Either you share the PDF or you share the report or whatever, or if they are not able to read and write, then you meet them and tell, this is what I have found and these are my recommendations. So this is how participatory action research differs from other types of research, which is just an academic research and where you maintain distance, no? But in participatory action research, you can't do that. You are accountable to the community. They are not your subjects. They are respondent. They are the equal stakeholders. We call them stakeholders. The way you have stake as a researcher, or they also have a stake in the issue. And that's why the rapport between the respondent and researcher is very high. It is a dialogical approach. You are not going as an expert with a all know this thing. No, we are all are going. It is a teaching and the learning process. They are also going to teach you. So every one of them contributes to this collective endeavor of participatory action research.
Right. So if any participants have any question or doubts, they can ask.
But they can also discuss the broad like areas which they would like to examine. So we can have a brainstorming on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I will just suggest that kindly limit your topic to the location and don't make it very broad, because no point if you choose, if you're passionate about any topic, because it's a month-long exercise, but you don't have to take a very vast topic so that you are not able to cover it. Secondly, as ma'am also said, that when we go to field, the tools which we are looking at or the issues at hand, it changes. So for that, we have tool preparation, tool testing, and we are also suggesting for pilot, so that once you go field, you take feedback and improve your questionnaire. Please limit the questions to around 10, 12. Don't ask much question. Ideally, your interview should be over within 10, 15, 20 minutes. Ideally is 12 to 15 minutes. Don't take much time because people don't have time. Be very straightforward and kindly try to talk in very simple language. If required, you can talk in Hindi or the regional language at your place. Then you can transcribe it in English or get the gist out of it. You can take pictures and other things. Next is for the field work. I would suggest that since
with permission, recording, videography and pictures and audiography with permission of the respondent.
And with the form only, the first part is consent. We have also given it in the draft layout. So the first thing is to consent. We'll discuss more about it in next week. And many people are also wondering that whether wahan jana padega, ye karna padega. You can also do it a telephonic interview. You can do it online interview if possible. And if it is good for you, you can go and do it physically also. I would repeat once again, you can do telephonic interview as well, just to save time, and also the natural weather conditions are not that great, so that you can do mix match of things. You can also have approach of focus group discussion. Sulekha ji is asking, do we necessarily have to record the interviews? No. But for your own perusal, because it's 10-15 minutes you're taking an interview, it's not possible to take all the notes. Ideally, when we do this kind of research, we record it with the permission, so that later on we can do review, or while writing the report or something, we can go back to it. Or not only the researchers who are working on it, more editors and more people can also improve upon it. But that's a very costlier and other exercise. You can skip.
And for official day, this thing, we have to preserve our schedule and interview schedule for 5 years. Even NFHS and all, if somebody challenges the data, then we can fall back and show that, look, this is what we have got. And that is what has reflected in the report. So that is also there. Yeah.
Sulekha ji, but if you'll make your questionnaire in a print format or a digital format, you can put on your notes. That also done. So it's not necessary that you keep audio or video recording. That's not. So the tool is your, it can be a printed thing, or you can also make a Google form or other kind of things that you can put, but it will be good to have field notes. We will also publish your field notes with photos and other things. We have shared the thing that you can do. The most important part is to finalize the topic. Because that will be something you have to dwell upon and also come up with a report. So there's a lot of exercise going on, but we also have to produce the report. So please take care of that. Any other participant have any other question?
I just had a query that is it going to be individual exercise or multicentric research also? If a person in Delhi or Lucknow or Kanpur, if they choose the same topic and use the modern methodology of putting things in the Dropbox and share their data and come up with a common paper, the joint authorship, is there possibility for that, or each one has to individually work on a topic?
Each one have to individually work on the topic, because in research we promote independent thinking and you have to work alone with the help and guidance. So that is how we pitch in for the research. It's not a college group project, and we will encourage you to walk the path alone so that you get more learning and your mind is able to creatively enhance more things. Sulekha ji, you can unmute yourself and ask the question if you have any. Garvit, you can also unmute yourself and ask the question. Could you explain once again?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very vague question, but the thing is, I understand what participatory research is, but I'm not very sure about like what sort of research is supposed to be done here. Like, I don't know what the end goal of the research is. Like, are we supposed to like look for certain like conditions, certain bills, certain policies, and we should examine how what their impact is and all that stuff, or is there anything else that we should take consider? Because I'm not very clear on that.
That would depend on your topic, what kind of queries you have and what kind of recommendation you would like to work upon. For example, Garvit, have you thought of any topic?
Currently, no, I haven't really thought of a topic. I haven't really gotten into it properly.
Please think of that. The end result would be, in this case, a report with all the details of your research and inquiries and all the things which you have gathered and analyzed, and also coming out with recommendations and
also future areas, no?
Future areas.
Further research.
Yeah,
this is a pilot 1 month thing. What can be done for further probing?
I would once again suggest that don't go for bigger topic or bigger goals. Keep it simple, keep it small. Small successes leads to better things. So if you think that very large, it won't be possible to do within the stipulated time limit. Any other question?
For a quantitative study, what should be the sample size? I'm talking of quantitative. What do you expect from them for 1 month?
This is qualitative, so
everything is qualitative.
It is
all topics will. It's all.
Because quantitative, it will become too much, and we're focusing on qualitative. Quantitative.
But mixed method is also okay.
Mixed method is
do triangulation.
Yes, that's allowed. But ma'am, that's entirely different thing. Uske liye we have other courses for that, data analytics and other thing for more of the quant thing. Because if we'll put in data, we also have to analyze, no, Excel, it will take a lot of time.
Yeah, I think so. This is a qualitative. So what should be the maximum number that you would expect?
Right. So we are suggesting, we have given a list of 7 types of stakeholders. You can choose as fitting to your topic. You can choose 3, 4, 5 kind of stakeholders. And then we are saying 15 to 20 interviews you do, including capturing from 2, 3, 4 different kind of stakeholders. The ideal thing, if while doing interviews for any kind of stakeholders, that when you get repetitive kind of responses, there you stop. Right. So let us say you talk to a certain kind of stakeholder, you interviewed 3, 4, 5 people. After 4 people, 5th, 6th, you are getting that, no, I'm getting the same responses. So you can stop that.
Saturation,
that you have, so you don't have to increase the sample there. Like that. Any other question? Nikita, do you have any question?
No, I think we have told them about that literature review. a bit about that?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that is an important
The
part of
structure of the report. Yeah. That's it.
Structure of the report. वो सब we will tell you how to write
And it is
report,
there in
what
the manual. Yeah, yeah. It is there.
manual
Manual.
content. Yeah, we will guide you about that.
Yeah.
Sulekha ji, you want to add anything? Yeah, go ahead. We are not able to hear you.
Yeah.
Mm,
She's unmuted. So.
Unmuted, but I'm not able to hear.
Report.
Yeah, now it's fine. Go ahead.
Expecting for the report.
Yeah.
What?
Word limit. Is there a word limit?
Yeah, there is the whole structure of report. Don't think about that for now. There are different components of it. So don't worry for that now. For now, select the topic.
All
and
right. Thank you.
yeah. We don't have to make a very lengthy report. Just try to figure out that. Don't dwell into that issue for now. Okay. So if you have no question, we can move ahead to closing remarks and vote of thanks.
I request Professor Vibhuti Patel to give her closing remarks for the session.
Yeah, I think today's session was interesting from the point of view of human interest dimension, because the whole process is of how a reporter evolves, a 17-year-old person who comes to Delhi and he evolves as one of the leading reporters of the parliamentary things, and so many nuances, especially his personal journey and how the political processes are taking place, so many things which are still not conclusive, the complexity of dealing with Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, Cabinet Committee, Joint Committee, the question of code of conduct, question of discipline in the parliament, the national security issues, personal data issues, and also the question of the kind of privileges that people's elected representatives have, and some of the challenges that we are facing, and some of the unresolved issues that we have faced. I think this is a very important for anyone to know, because whatever we understand in our topics of, say, civic studies or political science studies in theory, I think unless you can jump into the water, you don't realize that. And I think we as citizens, like when we started attending legislative assembly, parliamentary assembly, as young activists, no, at the age of 20, 21 and all, and we were first invited as observer when PCP&DT Act was being debated. First of all, we had to meet MP, MLA who would introduce the bill. So they said, these all issues are Greek and Latin to me. She was the only MLA in Mumbai who had a medical background. So we decided to approach her that this kind of sex selection is going to play havoc with Indian women's life. And after 3-4 sessions, when she introduced the bill, she said, you all be there in the viewers gallery. And that was a good experience. When the Goa, Bailancho Sad, Albertina and all, they were angry with the Goa's economic policy when the economic survey and budget of Goa was to be introduced, where the announcement was made that Goa would open its economy for 200 varieties of alcohol. And women's groups, when they read this in newspaper, they invited me, and I was there in the Goa's assembly. So I think these experiences play a very, very important role in empowering us as individuals, that we can also shape the world. We can use our power of tongue, we can use our power of pen, we can use power of our research, we can use the power of our clarity of thoughts on national and international issues. So I think it's a very empowering process. And I think what Mr. Himanshu Kumar discussed today, I think that must have given all of you the same kind of energy that yes, it is possible, change is possible. We just can't always say Tina, Tina, Tina. There is no alternative. But we are the people, and we the people, if Constitution has empowered us, and the multi-party system and parliamentary democracy has empowered us, we have freedom of press, and freely we can discuss these issues. There are channels in which we can take our local issues to the local self-government bodies, to the legislative bodies at the state subnational level, and at a national level in our parliament. And then also so many global issues with the young people. Yesterday, you must have seen that all the presentations talk about India's contribution to COPs. the UNHRC, how the lawyers, human rights lawyers, they and activists, they are also making contribution at an international level in the UN HRC and in the global body. So the change begins from where we are, and to be rooted in the local reality and taking, analyzing it, critically reflecting it on the issue. How can we promote different variety of rights with the Constitution is guaranteed. I think this is a good learning of this session. And now after that, our discussion on the participatory action research, how it is different from the other types of research, and how we have to own, we are the equal stakeholders in the research that we do. And once the report is ready, we are also accountable to whatever we have written, reflected, analyzed, and suggested. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. With your permission, we can go for the vote of thanks.
Please go ahead.
As we come to the end of day 15 of Law and Public Policy Youth Fellowship, an online national summer school program, a 2-month online immersive legal awareness and action research certificate training course and internship program, I, Nikita Bhardwaj, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, New Delhi. We are grateful to our expert for the day 15 session, Mr. Himanshu Shekhar, for taking out his valuable time and giving us an opportunity to learn from this online certificate program. We thank our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel, and lead advisor, Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam, for convening the session. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. We look forward to welcoming you coming Monday, that is 17 July, at 11:30 a.m. for our day 16th of the certification course by distinguished experts Dr. Amar Jisani and Dr. Soumyadeep Chattopadhyay. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publication. We hope you continue to join in the future to our IMPRI #WebPolicyTalk and #WebPolicyLearning. Wishing you a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.